Building for density is on the fast track, while transportation infrastructure is in the slow lane. What are your concerns about the 5 to 10 year lag between the building boom and improvements in transportation?
Another tough 60-second question. So the city's been taking the right steps to activate and move as quickly as possible on the trail through the city of Santa Cruz. Unfortunately, the current construction boom has made those projects expensive, as it would for any variation of the rail trail that would have been proposed. So now the city has to seek more funding and go back out for bids. But we have to continue to accelerate the trail through all of Santa Cruz as soon as possible to create a new corridor of dedicated bike and pedestrian traffic that's safe for our neighborhoods. We can also focus our residential development where we already have the most transit and transportation infrastructure, and that's downtown. And that's what's being proposed, and I strongly support that. So accelerate the transportation improvements and focus our density where we have transit available downtown.
So I'm going to touch on that last question we had too, because I didn't have enough time to talk about it, but it leads into this one really well. The situation, like I mentioned before, is a lack of prioritization and a misallocation of budgetary funding. That goes for cities, the city, and also for the metro. There's a lot of ways that the metro can have money moved around in different ways to bolster transportation, and this conversation has not happened for so long that we built so many housing units that now work in this entrenched situation of transportation. I live on Pennsylvania Avenue, and if you don't get home before 5 o'clock, then all of the parking spots are gone. There's no way to get to anywhere South County after 2 p.m. without a 1 hour wait. Now, the reason, another person up here said that was because they're building housing in South County. I attribute that to the lack of renters protections and the lack of rent stabilization that's been non-existent in Santa Cruz for decades, which has allowed rents to become exorbitant and uncontrolled, which has forced people that live in Santa Cruz or work in Santa Cruz to live elsewhere. We need to stabilize rent, we need to build affordable housing responsibly, and we need to make sure we can bolster our transportation system.
I think we should all get on a bus because we do sound a lot alike. We should go on tour. I guess in the time frame that was mentioned in the question, in the next 5 to 10 years, I think the most obvious thing is to finish the developments that have already been entitled over on the west side. There's about 200 units of housing that have been approved over there within a mixed-use development, adjacent to decent transportation as well over there. Mission Street is going to be heavily impacted, obviously, by that. So I would agree that we need to get more jump bikes, look at trails getting put in, and then I think also I'm going to agree with Greg here that the next area really of focus needs to be downtown. Again, we are not decided on the corridors, and it's pretty much dead. So we need to look at building in the next 5 to 10 years adjacent to the transit areas, and use those areas as a way to try to get people closer to their jobs and transportation.
Rather than approving additional housing, I think what we need to do is invest in transportation. So the EcoBus in Boulder that we've talked about in other forums, it really is a viable model that we could do in Santa Cruz, and I truly believe that as a community, when we had our water crisis, we conserved way more than anyone expected us to be able to do. I think the same could be true about single car trips. If people are given the incentive to ride the bus and given either free passes or low-cost passes, I believe people will actually take the bus if we improve bus services, if we make Metro be more like EcoBus in Boulder, where they're comfortable, they're hip, there's Wi-Fi, and they have music, it's very fun to ride, and I think we can do that. And the problem is that we've been underfunding our major transportation, and also I believe in Vision Zero. We have to make sure it's much safer for our cyclists to go across county and go across town, and that will help everything.
Can I see a show of hands of how many of you have used a bus in Santa Cruz, public transportation, on a regular basis? On a regular basis, like 3-4 times a week? Not a lot. lot. Not a lot. And if we want to shift the pendulum, we need to get out of our cars. But we love our cars. And companies are coming out with new types of electronic cars. Electric cars, not electronic. Electric cars. And potentially bringing back hydrogen cars. And look at us, we're all excited to go buy the electric car. Greg talks about his all the time. So how can we get out of our cars and get on bikes? Because they're really fun now. Those are electric too. But we need to be realistic. Are we going to get out of our cars and jump on a bike? Are we going to rely on a bus system that maybe isn't reliable all the time? Maybe. But we have to trust it, and it has to be implemented to make it better for us to use it.
So this is a much bigger issue than the city of Santa Cruz. Our whole nation has been absolutely abysmal when it comes to transportation planning, and it's reflected locally as well. I was in Seoul, South Korea a couple decades ago visiting a friend, and we took the subway out to the middle of nowhere. And I asked him, why is the subway going to the middle of nowhere? And he said, I wanted to show you that in order to build new housing in Seoul or in this part of Korea, you have to build the infrastructure first, and they consider infrastructure to be transportation and moving people before you build the houses. Unfortunately, we haven't done that here, and so we're backpedaling. And as much as I want to sit up here and say, you know, we've got to get everybody out of their cars and onto a bus, the problem is the bus has to share the same road as all of the cars, and then the bus ends up taking a very, very long time. It took me an hour and a half to commute out to Cabrillo when I was a student. I was living on the west side of Santa Cruz. So, you know, it's not going to be perfect, but we can try.
Well, I think the question in many ways answers itself, and that is that this high-density building and low-density and low-progress transportation is causing gridlock and horrible problems, and it is poor planning. We need to invest heavily into the alternative transportations, and bike lanes are an excellent idea, jump bikes are a good idea, but we have to have safe bike lanes and safety of the bikes. We're the highest city for fatalities on bicycles in the state the last time I checked. So we're really in trouble with the way that we handle bicycle safety. So we want people to use bikes, but we need to build more safe lanes, trails, and other things to accommodate that. And we also need to rethink high-density building. I know we have problems with rents and lots of things happening in available housing. But the answer is not just keep building more and more and more gridlock without thinking about the carrying capacity.
Again, we all kind of agree on the same thing. Except for one thing. My 8-year-old grandson is waiting for the flying cars. So instead of my trip to go see him in Sacramento, will only take about an hour. When he was born, 8 years ago, I could go to Sacramento in about 2.5 hours, driving the speed limit. Now it takes me 4 hours with no traffic in the middle of the day. So I see this every day here at my house. 2 o'clock, traffic, stopped. People running down my road. I've been almost hit twice. Not okay. The bikes are a great idea, the bus is a great idea, but I would never ride on any of our buses at this point. They are too scary. And that goes right back to public safety. If we're not safe, we can't go anywhere.
So one of the things that I think is really important, and I mentioned this before, is that we need to try to keep more people who work in Santa Cruz, living in Santa Cruz. A lot of the new development that's been proposed, and including 555 Pacific that's been built, is targeting people with higher incomes than people who actually live and work in Santa Cruz. They're targeting commuters who work over the hill, who are able to afford a studio for $2,400 a month. Those types of housing are not going to solve our housing problems in Santa Cruz, and they're only going to increase to the problems we have because it's bringing more people in and not solving the crisis that we have already here in Santa Cruz. We've lost a lot of affordable housing due to Airbnbs, the rental inspection programs, and just loss of housing because some places have been closed down and some long-term housing has now been converted into 9-month or short-term rentals. And this is one of the big issues. If people are moving further out and they have to come in, then that's going to be a problem. I think that buses, we need to increase more routes. I used to take the bus to UCSC. I can't anymore to go to work because there are no routes available. And so we need to start thinking about strategic ways we can increase getting cars off the road.
Thank you.